This episode is sponsored by the Association of Body Mapping Education. Musicians train for years to master their craft, but few are ever taught how to move. Without that knowledge, many develop habits that lead to tension, pain, and even long-term injury. But these injuries aren't inevitable, they're preventable. That's where body mapping comes in. Rooted in anatomy and movement science, body mapping helps musicians move with awareness, supporting ease, expression, and longevity in their practice. Join the Association for Body Mapping Education, ABME, for Music Moves, Fostering Dynamic Connections, their biennial international conference starting June 18th in Portland, Oregon. Explore hands-on workshops across 4 instrument-specific tracks and hear from guest speaker Brenda Winkle, an educator and intuitive coach whose work blends somatic insight with spiritual depth to help creatives reclaim energy, set boundaries, and lead with clarity and compassion. Discover how movement can unlock freedom in your music. Register today at bodymap.org. And now onto the show.
What is our snapshot performer self? Who is that we take on stage? And so I try and say to people, pack your rucksack with feathers rather than bricks. Because bricks will weigh you down and feathers will help you fly.
You're listening to Artistry with Heart, a musician's wellness podcast. I'm Stephanie Lynn Bernards. On today's episode, we're speaking with Lucie Burns. Lucie is an industry-leading performance coach, speaker, and best-selling author of The Art of Live Performance Unlocked. She's the founder of Stage Ready Artists and the host of the Singing Buddha podcast. Lucie was named a performance coach to follow by the LA Weekly and has been featured on 2 TV documentaries showcasing her transformational work with musicians. With nearly 30 years in the industry, Lucie's unique approach makes her a go-to expert for those looking to own the stage and transform their craft. Lucie is also known as the artist, songwriter, and music producer Lazy Hammock. She's achieved 4 number ones in the World Chill Lounge charts, released 11 self-produced albums, and amassed over 25 million streams. Her music has been licensed to TV shows and major labels, including Sony BMG, Ministry of Sound, Head Candy, and EMI. Lucie, it's such an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm really honored myself to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this conversation. You have such a holistic and intuitive approach to your artistry, your musicianship, your performing, your coaching, all of it. It's so clear you have a deep understanding of what musicians need to hear both on and off the stage.
Yeah, and I think that I've focused a lot on that because I am a musician myself, and I feel that I know the nurturing that musicians need, but they rarely get, because putting an artist on a stage, expecting them to just perform amazingly and connect with people when they haven't even learned to connect with themselves is really unrealistic. For me, I really try and just work with the person so they begin to feel good about themselves and their craft. And in a way, I think it's probably what I would have liked when I started out in the music industry. And I try to be that person for artists that is there and can support them through the good and the bad, the ups and the downs, you know?
I love all of that, and I cannot wait for listeners to hear what you have to say. I want to hear everything, and I don't even know where to start, but I think the best place to start would be going behind the scenes for a moment and hearing about how your musical journey began and how you then became so passionate about helping musicians unlock. Where do you want to start? Tell us your story.
So, I mean, if I go way back, if I think to when music became something big in my life, it was as early as 3, when I was 3 years old. I remember we had a set of chime bars, and I used to just play the chime bars. I used to just love them. And it was always encouraged in my house. You know, I was very lucky. I was in a family. I was adopted actually into a family And they had some great musical instruments. We had a grand piano, we had chime bars, we had all sorts of instruments. And I just remember being really drawn to them and just loved them. And my mum, when I was a little bit older, she booked me in for classical piano lessons. So I had about 8 years of classical piano lessons. But I didn't like practicing the same way I didn't really like doing homework at school. I just didn't really want to practice, even though I got to grade 3, you know, but I probably should have got further, but I got to grade 3. But I started just playing on the piano, just myself, and thinking, oh, wow, I can actually sort of go off track and not do what's in front of me. I can actually make up music. And that to me was a complete revelation when I started doing that. And it was like, wow. And as soon as I started doing that, I started writing songs from the age of 12, and I just didn't stop. I've probably written over 3,000 songs or even more in my lifetime. I've just written and written and written and written and written.
Wow.
But I loved writing songs. I just loved it. Eventually, when I think it was 20 or 21, I think, no, maybe 23, I went to a music college. But in between that, I'd had a child, right? So that's a big thing there.
Wow, yeah.
But I'd gone to college, and I was doing music performance and technology, and I'd moved up to London, and I really enjoyed it. But the first time we were asked to perform, I sat at the piano and I thought, well, I know my song. I've been having singing lessons. I know my song inside out. I can play it on the piano. I can sing it. And my leg just started shaking uncontrollably, and I just couldn't control it. And then I just started feeling really self-conscious, really embarrassed. You know, there was an audience there. I mean, it was a really cool audience. It was in this like funky warehouse building, and it was all really cool. But I was so nervous. And I will always remember that time because I couldn't understand what it was. I know my craft. I thought I did. But what I hadn't realized was I was learning the craft of songwriting, but I didn't know the craft of performance. And it's a separate skill. And I think this is where a lot of artists get stuck, is they poor things in a way, and that's not in a patronizing way. I was talking about myself as well, that you get pushed on this stage, as I said earlier, expected to just perform really confidently, but not realizing that performance is a separate skill. And that skill hasn't been learnt. Because I think until quite recently, really, people didn't really know it was a skill or understand that. I think still some artists don't know that's a skill. They just think they should be able to get on stage and perform without any help, because I think that's what audiences expect. And I really became interested in that. And then after I finished that college course, they asked me there, they said, we really see potential in you. We'd really like you to be a tutor, but you have to do this music teacher training course. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. You know, I've got my son and everything. I don't want to be a teacher. The last thing I want to do is be a teacher. No way. I want to be a musician. I'm not going to be a teacher. And they just did not let up. And they said, no, we think you'll be great. We really want you to do this. And I was like, no. But being the sort of empath that I am, not just empath, but people pleaser, in a way, I felt, oh, I can't really say no. And then I thought about it and I thought, actually, it makes sense because I was a single parent. I needed to have the holidays off with my son. I didn't have any money, so it wasn't like I could pay someone to look after him. So I thought, well, actually, teaching would fit in really well. So I decided to go for it. So that's kind of, in a way, what happened. But in between that, there were bands, there was emceeing, there was all sorts of things that I've done in between.
Unreal. And you had a little boy at this time too? You had a kiddo? Wow.
Yes.
And you were juggling all of this just on your own. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was difficult, really difficult.
Wow. I am so impressed, especially as a new mom, that you juggled all those things. And it's so interesting. I always kind of hear musicians saying, I only want to be a performer. I don't want to teach. And I so feel like they go hand in hand. I don't know if you feel that way, that the teaching and the performing, like it's when you're on stage, you're teaching the audience your songs, you know, whether you...
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in that sense, yes. I think that some people are more compelled to go into the teaching side and some people more into the performance side. And I definitely wanted to be the performer songwriter. And I think it was because the way that I saw my teachers teach when I was at school, or how they came across, I didn't want to be like that. And I thought that was how teachers were. Well, I went to a private school that was very, very snooty and was very, very strict. And I was discriminated a lot because I'd moved down from London when I was adopted to the countryside. And I was the only person of color in my whole school. And so there was a lot of discrimination from the students and from the teachers. So there was that side of it, but there was also just, I was never believed. No one ever listened to my side of anything. It was just a constant kind of battle just to be heard and just to be accepted for me, which in a way shaped me and who I became for a while, because I didn't really know who I was because I wasn't allowed to be who I thought I was. So it was quite complicated, really. But I just thought teachers were like they were. And I didn't want to be like that. And so what happened when I first started teaching, I had about 20 people in this class of mine, all musicians. It was great. I was at this really great music college, and I just felt so uncomfortable because I was just like, this just doesn't fit with me. I was trying to act in a way that I thought I should be as a teacher, but it just wasn't me. And then I gave myself a good talking to, and I said, Lucie, if you're going to do this, you've got to just kind of go with it and kind of flow with it and just get in tune with who you are and the group that you're teaching. And from that moment on, I just relaxed. I connected very much, actually, like what you were saying earlier about being on stage, that connection you have with the audience. And it's not them and us. It should never be them and us. It's always us, whether you're teaching, whether you're performing, it's always us, all of us in the room. I'm no different from you. I might be doing a different job, but I'm no different from you. I'm a human being here, and we're all here to either learn something. And I always told them that I can learn as much from you as you can from me. That's what I was taught when I trained. And I just loved it because the response I got from the students was incredible, because I realized that you can just be you. And it was a very interesting time and an interesting journey for me.
Absolutely. I have always wondered about people's internal journeys as artists. And I think that was the big inspiration. It was the big inspiration behind this podcast. Was I was having so many conversations with artists who were saying exactly what you're saying now, right? Like there's like this disconnect. There's this like impossibility of connecting like who you are on stage with who you are inside, who you are off stage, who you are in your daily life. And I personally have struggled with performance anxiety in different facets, and I have a lot of students who also do. And I also know a lot of just elite musicians who have the same issues that students that are just beginning have, that I have. So what I've found is, sharing our stories and hearing that we're not alone. And also there are resources, and kind of getting behind the science of what creates performance anxiety, what creates that disconnect on stage, and how to get through it. And I would love to hear how you honed your craft of teaching the art of performance. What was that moment for you where you made that shift to dig deep and figure out how to get inside the art of performing and make it really deeply rewarding for yourself? How do you deal with the fear that comes from performing? How do you deal with that insecurity?
I think one of the first things is, where do we focus? I mean, because we can go back to, and as I said, I always like to go and talk with the person behind the performer and, build a connection with that person. So quite often we'll go quite deep. I get to know a lot of things about the artists that I work with because they trust me and they open up to me. And I don't take that lightly, that when people trust me, we can go right back to our childhoods, because quite often self-doubt, perfectionism, self-judgment, all of those type of things, comparison to others, a lot of them start in childhood. But if we're just looking at it like, okay, what are some of the things you can do, or what are some of the things that are affecting us, and how can we sort of overcome those? Things like flipping the focus, something very simple. Most artists, what they do is they focus on themselves constantly. Oh, I'm not going to be very good. Everyone's going to be looking at me. I'm really nervous. It's all about me, 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 me. And the thing is, these typical artist ego, of course, it's all about me, 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 me. But actually, what we need to do as artists is start recognizing that it's not all about us. It's about us when we're in the rehearsal room. But as soon as we step on stage, it's about our audience. For the audience, it's about us. But for us, it's about them. And so when we flip the focus, if your focus is somewhere else, it can't be on you. Just like when we help someone when, if we have a friend or something who's really down or really having a hard time, and we sit with them and we talk with them, suddenly we don't remember our own problems because we're focused on our friend. It's exactly the same. We have to flip the focus onto our audience. And I stress this a lot, that good performance is when we focus on our audience, not on ourselves. So that doesn't mean that we don't pay any attention to what we're doing on stage. Of course we need to do that. But we need to pay more attention, because we should know what we're doing on stage. We should have learned our stuff already. But we need to pay more attention to the audience's experience. What is the experience they are having, and what is the experience I am giving? Instead of, oh, I'm going to be really bad, no one's going to like me, this is going to be awful. What is it I can give the audience tonight? What is it that I can do that is going to enhance their evening? What can I do to transform my gig so the audience have a great time? If you're thinking about your audience, you can go really far, because you're just building on what an amazing performance you can give to your audience. Mm. But all of that doesn't come before recognizing that we need to connect with who we are, that kind of authenticity inside. Quite often, performers try and be someone else. They don't think they're good enough, so they think that they'll try and act like someone else. Like when I started being a teacher, oh, well, a teacher is that, so I have to do that. And some people are like that as performers. Oh, the performer I like does that, so I have to do that. Now, fair enough, there are some things that, of course, you're going to learn from other performers. Of course, you're going to learn certain skills from them by watching them. But it's starting to recognize that you have so much within yourself. You can celebrate your individuality, which is actually one of the chapters in my book, and stop comparing yourself to others, because comparison takes energy. And while we're focusing on someone else, that's taking away the energy that we could be spending on preparing for our performances and making our craft more skillful on stage. And so there's so many areas to dig into. It's like even how we connect with our audience once we're on stage. What is it we need to do to connect with them? Because one of the things that I talk about in my book is the audience is a mirror. If you think about it, if you've ever been to a gig that you really enjoyed, when you watch the performer, it's because the performer has been able to let go. What that does is it gives us as the audience the permission to let go. And it's incredibly powerful, because that then means that we then have control over our audience. If we are able to let go, our audience will let go. We're giving about 20% to our audience, but we expect them to give us 90%. It doesn't work like that. Why don't we turn that around and we give 90% and then see what comes back from them?
I love this idea of putting the focus and giving the audience your attention. How did you discover this for yourself?
Oh, it's just from years of performing. I performed for over 25 years, and from teaching. I've taught in colleges, universities, youth clubs prisons, children's homes.
Wow.
I've worked in personal development as well. I've worked for big artists, small artists, influencers. This is from experience. I mean, this is deep experience over 25 years. And suddenly realizing that, oh, wait a minute, that happened last time with that performer, or that happened with another performer, and kind of connecting all the dots. And if you do something long enough, you see the dots connecting in the same ways over and over. And then suddenly you're thinking, right, well, then what can I do about this? Or what have I seen? What can I recognize? And I recognize that a lot of the difficulties that artists have, most of them have those difficulties. And so I was getting asked the same question, but every artist thought it was only them that had these problems. So they would never speak about it to people because they felt so self-conscious, like it was just them. And then I'd be like, oh, no, everyone goes through this. And they're like, what? And that was a revelation to them. And I love doing that with artists because suddenly they feel like, oh, it's not just me then. And it's like, no, it's not just you at all. This is just normal. I went through this myself. Don't worry about that. I mean, I've got an experience years ago that was so painful. And actually, in some ways, I think it would have determined some of the journey that I took with music performance and teaching. I did a gig with my band. I had a band years ago, and I've still got them actually. I still play with them when I play. But it was my first gig with this band years ago, like over 20 years ago. But I remember being on stage and not being able to look at my audience at all because they petrified me and they were staring at me. And all these years I'd wanted to be on stage and I wanted people to stare at me and want to listen to me. And, as soon as I got on there, I wanted the floor to open up and the stage to open up and just drop down. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle all these eyes looking at me. So do you know what I did? I literally turned round, or sort of half turned round, and sang to my band because I thought, oh, I like them. I feel safe with them. So I just kept looking at my band. Occasionally I looked back at the audience and I kept looking at my band. And I felt so uncomfortable. I couldn't wait for this gig to end. I think I only had about 3 songs or something. And I got off and I said to my friend who'd come to the gig with me, what did you think about that? How did I do? And of course, when it's your friend, you just want them to say, you did really well, because you just want someone to tell you that you did your best, right? And she said, if you ever perform like that again, because she was a really good performer. If you ever perform like that again, I would advise you give up. Yeah. I was broken.
Wow.
Because 1, those words came from who I thought was a friend. And 2, it was the truth, but it was said in such a hurtful way. And it took me a long time to get over. And actually, I've got some rules at the back of the book called Follow the After Show Rules. And one of them is about not critiquing your gig negatively after your gig, because the adrenaline is so high then that the depth of the emotion that you take in when you're talking negatively and what embeds in the subconscious is a lot more than just on a normal day. And so it's really important that you critique your gig when the after party's over. Give it 48 hours if you're drinking afterwards or whatever, or 70 whatever hours. But just take your time and be kind. Be kind with each other in the band, And so I've always made sure that everything that I say to a performer can be helpful and useful and kind. Kindness is a gift. Kindness really, really does a lot for people, for their self-confidence, for their belief in themselves. My mum always said this to me. She said, Lucy, always be kind and always be loving. And it was like, that's the best bit of advice I've ever had in my life.
Yes, and it starts with being kind to ourselves, as you
Absolutely.
said. And Wow, that is sounds like such a pivotal moment for you in your career to have somebody tell you that if you ever basically have a less than amazing performance, you may as well walk away. And was that a moment for you where you're like, I just don't know if I can continue on? What was that when she said that, when your friend said that?
I couldn't believe it at first. In fact, I talk about it in the beginning, in the introduction of the book. It was a pivotal moment. And I was shocked at first because sometimes it takes a while for something to sink in when you hear something that you don't expect from someone that you love.
Yeah.
You actually can't believe they've said it.
I know. Yeah.
And so it doesn't sink in for ages properly because you don't actually believe it happened. So you wake up the next day that it didn't really happen. It did happen, right? So it's one of those. And then, of course, I wanted to just hide. I just wanted to hide under the covers forever. It was so painful, thinking about it. But eventually, what it did do is it made me look at the way that I'd performed. Because there was no doubt I needed to perform better. And there was no doubt that I wasn't giving the audience what they needed. But I didn't really know what to do. But I knew something had to change. So with the teaching of artists, because you know what it's like when you teach, you learn. And so you teach and then you're teaching, but you're kind of teaching yourself as well. And I also learned a lot from her because she was such a brilliant performer. And she did apologize about it in the end. It was all fine. But I learned a lot from her about performance. And I learned a lot from watching people's mistakes, and I learned a lot from watching things that people did well. Because we always think, watching someone do something really well, and that's how I'm going to learn. We don't just learn from watching someone do something well, especially with performance. Watch what people don't do well when they perform. And it's not just looking for what people don't do well, because that's kind of coming from, seems like quite a mean space, but it's not. It's looking at how you can become better. Mm-hmm. And so watching people, it's not just about watching them, it's about the feeling. What is the feeling that I get when I watch this performer? Why am I getting that feeling? What is it they are doing that's making me disconnect? What is it they're doing that's making me connect? What is it they're doing that's making me smile? What is it they're doing that's making me dance, that's making me laugh, that's making me open up my heart? What is it that's making me close my heart, want them to go, I want to go? All those questions. Mm-hmm. And then as performers, we can start looking at, okay, well, what is it that we need to do for our audience to open them up, help them to feel happy and alive and connected. And we do that by feeling alive and connected ourselves, Right.
Yeah. Which is why everyone needs to immediately buy The Art of Live Performance Unlocked, because it has so many beautiful nuggets of wisdom. Yeah. And I love that you were talking about starting with mindset. I am a body mapping educator, and I don't know if you're familiar with body mapping.
No,
but
not really. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a form of somatic education catered to musicians that teaches anatomical information about the body to prevent injury and promote facility at the instrument. And so body mapping is the art of refining the body map, which is how we, perceive our bodies. We quite literally have a body map of every area of our body. We have a body map of how our arm functions and a body map of our spine, and we have these ideas, right, of how our body functions, and then we move our bodies according to these body maps. And so body mapping is the art of refining that via true anatomical information. And I love that you start with mindset and the importance of that. And I would love to hear, you have these awesome affirmations. I think it's the gig affirmations.
Gig success affirmations.
Yes, the gig success affirmations. And, I would love to hear how you shift the mindset. I'm assuming it has to do with affirmations. How do you shift from, I'm not a musician, I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, no one wants to hear, the whole garbage inner critic that most of us face. And if you don't, Congratulations. How do you work with mindset so that you can shift from I'm not a musician to I am a musician, and it matters not in what capacity? How do you shift from I'm not a vocalist because I'm not a trained opera singer to being like I'm a vocalist because I sing? How do you shift from being like the audience, I need to just block the audience out of my awareness and just focus on the music and get through it? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
So I would really start with thinking about and becoming aware. So it's awareness is first. When you are aware, you can change something. When you're not, you can't. And quite often we're just on autopilot, just saying all these things to ourselves. So I've got this thing called sushi thoughts written in the book as well. And it's thinking about if you go to like a sushi restaurant and you've got the conveyor belt going round and you pick all the nice food that you want off from the conveyor belt. Now, we have a conveyor belt of thoughts going around in our minds. And what we usually do is we'll go, right, I'll pick that big, juicy, negative thought and I'll sit there and I'll feed on it for days. But when it's the food going around, we'll pick the nice dishes. And it's thinking about, okay, so if you're picking that negative thought and you're ruminating on that, that is going to have an effect on you and your subconscious, just the same way that a positive thought is. Now, it's not about being all happy clappy, or it's just all positivity, because it's not about that. We are constantly affirming ourselves, whether that's negatively or positively. So if we've got to a place where we're saying these things about ourselves, it is because of what has been said before. It's just we are repeating it because we now believe that what has been said over and over and over is a fact. And that fact has become a belief. But it's not true. It's not a fact. It's your opinion, but it doesn't mean it's true. Now, if we can come to believe something about ourselves that isn't true, we can come to believe something about ourselves that is. So how did we get that negative thought about ourselves? We got it through repetition. Just came through repeating. Now, what I discovered was that if you think back to when you're young, most people have had that their self-doubt usually starts from a young age. And it's usually because someone has said something that changes someone's perspective of themselves. And so usually children, when they're young, they're quite confident. Unless they've obviously had a traumatic background, that's different. But if they haven't, they're generally quite confident. They, run around generally quite happy doing their thing until someone says something. They go out, it's from their family, or they go out into nursery or into school. Someone calls them a name. Suddenly they've been stung, and they don't understand this because they were just doing their own thing, being happy, and someone's hurt them. And what happens if you get hurt a number of times, you eventually begin to believe that you are worth hurting, that there is something about you that is worth hurting. There's something about you that isn't worthy. And so what happens is you start to believe what people are saying to you, especially if it's been said a number of times. And so I call it learning to drop the baton. Basically what happens is someone hands us a baton. As I said, could be a parent, could be a friend, or someone who you thought was a friend, could be a teacher, could be anyone. Hand you this baton and says, this is you, this is my opinion of you. And you take that baton from them and you hold on to it very tight, and you hold on to it through life. And what you do every time you step on a stage is you hand the baton to your audience. When you get in a relationship, you hand it to your partner. When when you're in a different situation, you'll hand it to someone else. And so what happens, we go around handing this baton out to people, and then they reflect back what they have been given from us. And this is a self-perpetuating sort of phenomena, really. And so with the mindset, what we need to do is we need to retrain and reprogram our mindset. Now, if we've been told these things a number of times that have really affected us, we then need to start telling ourselves things that are going to affect us as well, but in another way, in a better way. It's going to make us feel better about ourselves. And so I call it the drip drip effect. If there's enough drips, bucket is going to fill, whether that's full of negativity or positivity.
Mm-hmm.
If there's enough drips, you are going to start changing your belief about yourself. I don't believe it's just all affirmations, but I do believe it's a start. If I can say to myself before a gig, it's going to be great, this gig. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to create a great energy in the room. The audience is going to give me an amazing energy. We are going to have a fantastic time together. I'm going to light up the room. I am so excited about this gig. Now, hearing that makes you feel good about yourself, right? But a lot of people won't say that. Most people, as I was saying earlier, are just saying, I'm really nervous. I know I'm going to forget my lyrics. I know no one's going to like me. Everyone's going to judge me. It's going to go really badly. I just want to get off stage. I don't even want to do the gig anymore. Now, if you're going in with that attitude and that energy, of course your gig's not going to go particularly well. Because why would it? You haven't got the right energy. Yes, I've learned how to perform, but that doesn't mean that I don't ever get nervous. And it doesn't mean that that negativity doesn't ever creep in. The difference is I know how to control that. And so I feel that negativity in my body first before it comes out of my mouth or goes into my mind. So as soon as I feel that, I say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Now I will start, if I've got an album launch or something, I will start about 3 months in advance working on my mindset. I will start working on my mindset before my performance, because my mindset has got to go into rehearsals with my band. So I need to be on top of things. I will not let a negative thought cross my mind about my performance and my upcoming gig for that whole time. Because once I'm in that training ground and getting ready, I just won't have it. I cannot let it in. It's like letting someone into your house that you know shouldn't be there. It's like leaving the door open at night and just hoping for the best that no one's going to break in. But the door's wide open. It's quite likely that someone might just come in and take something, right? And it's the same. You leave that door open to your mind, you're letting something in that is not going to be good for you. And you have to close that door. And it is a matter of literally telling yourself, it is closed. Now, I know that sounds like quite simple, and it's not, but if you do it a number of times, it will become a lot easier because you've got really accomplished at telling yourself how bad you are. So why can't you get accomplished at telling yourself how good you are or how good you could be? You know, and some people are afraid to say that, you know, they're a lovely person, or I love myself, or I'm going to be really great tonight, or I'm going to give such a great gig, because you feel bad for saying that because you don't quite believe that that is you. You don't quite believe you deserve to say those nice things about yourself. Why not? Why shouldn't you be kind to yourself? I say, if you don't speak to yourself like you would speak to your best friend, you're doing yourself a disservice. And we think that something isn't going to hurt us, something isn't going to damage us because we're saying it to ourselves. And that's okay. We can just speak to ourselves as we want. I've told someone once before, don't speak to yourself like that. I don't want to hear you speak to yourself like that. It's not nice. And surely, if we don't feel good about ourselves, how can our audience feel good about us? What baton are we handing our audience?
So well put. Well, it sounds like everyone, including myself, needs to read The Art of Live Performance Unlocked. And I hope that everyone listening will check it out. The information to the book will be in the show notes. And you can also reach out to Lucie directly to hear how to get a copy of this incredible book. But I really can't think of a single performer who wouldn't benefit from this kind of information. It just feels like so groundbreaking, but also so, it's always been in the tapestry of my artistry my whole life, right? And this idea of really just starting with ourselves and our mindset, and of course building our skills. And I remember reading a little bit from you about balancing mindset and skill set and the importance of being prepared, of course. But it all really starts with what we believe about ourselves and how we talk to ourselves, how we speak to ourselves.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
thank you. And I really can't wait to dig into this book. It just sounds so incredible. I always ask my interviewees how they actively honor their authentic musical voice. And it sounds like your whole life is a testament to that, to this gift of giving people your true self and who you really are and letting it speak through your voice. Is there anything you can say about how you honor your authentic musical voice, yourself in the musical world?
I think I've learned to trust myself and trust who I am, because I think for years you get on stage, or I got on stage, and you're not quite sure you're enough. However good you are, or not so good, but you're just never quite sure you're enough, which is why we block, this amazing connection with our audience, because we just don't think we're enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I've learned to trust that I am enough, but I can always keep learning. That doesn't mean that I've stopped learning. It means that myself as a person is enough. And I think when I began to be more authentic in my performances and just connecting with the audience, just like on a level, just than thinking, oh, I've got to do this with the audience, I've got to do that. Just try and be more natural and not try and fit into a mold that wasn't made for you. Fit into your mold, or make your mold how you want. You have that choice.
Right.
You take a snapshot of yourself. I also write about this in the book. You've got your performer self. You take a snapshot of yourself into when you're going out with your friends, when you're doing a gig. We've got to learn to take, what is our snapshot performer self? Who is that we take on stage? We don't take certain things that aren't anything to do with it. We take what's relevant, and we take what's going to enhance our performances. And so I try and say to people, pack your rucksack with feathers rather than bricks, because bricks will weigh you down and feathers will help you fly.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Oh my goodness. I feel like I could talk to you all day. So you chose to share a beautiful piece, Lucie, and it's a piece titled Flow that listeners will get to hear in its entirety at the end of this episode. And you literally have thousands of songs you could have chose from. No exaggeration. It sounds like covering various genres. So why did you decide on Flow?
I decided on this because I thought that it really touched me when I heard it back, because I was listening to the overall intention, I think, of the song and the feeling that I got from it. It's always about feeling for me. What is the feeling that I've got? And if I can listen to something that even I've written years after I've written it and it still has an effect, then I think, okay, well, hopefully it will have an effect for some other people. What happens with me a lot of the time is that I go through, as all people do, many different situations in our lives, ups and downs. And I've had a lot of hard times bringing my son up on my own and not having much money and trying to get my music career up and running around crazy like, we do as parents and as people and as musicians, and trying to juggle everything and relationships and all of it. And hitting walls a lot, and that feeling of hitting a wall, because it's got lyrics in it that says, you feel like there's no way out, all the pressures of life weighing down on top of you. I know it's dark where you are. I've been there. So take my hand, it's here for you to hold.
Feeling like there was no way out, all the pressures of life weighing down on top of you. I know it's dark where you are. I've been there. So take my hand, it's here for you to hold.
So it's kind of relating to people. I know times can be really tough and really hard, but it isn't always like this. And I that's really difficult for people to hear, that sort of thing, when they're in a hole. No one wants to hear that, because you're in that hole and it's like right now. The problem is with that saying, the light at the end of the tunnel. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, but how long's the tunnel? And I think this is the problem. People are stuck in the tunnel, and they'd be all right if they knew that in a week it's going to be over, or in a day. But sometimes it's 6 months, and sometimes it's a year, and sometimes it's 5 years. And sometimes for some people, it doesn't end. And so I think this is really hard. So it's just trying to encourage people, or to just relate and say, I've been there, and just take my hand, because we're going to try and get through this together. You know, and then there's a line which is flow like the water in the stream and keep moving. And I think that if we're flowing downstream, there will always be rocks in the stream, but you can go over, under, or around. The fact is that if you are like water in a stream, water doesn't stop when it hits an obstacle. It moves around it.
Beautiful. I can't wait for people to hear it. I have loved it. I've listened to it countless times now. It's just a stunning piece and so encouraging for these times that we're in.
Yeah.
We all need to hear that message, no matter where we're at in life, that
absolutely,
like, we have each other's backs. We get to choose to be on the same team and hold each other's hands through dark times and flow through life regardless of what happens to us. So I love that reminder.
Choice. It's a choice, isn't it? It's a choice we can make to hold people's hands and walk with them.
Yes.
Or to push people away. And there's a lot of pushing away at the moment. And
I know.
We need to join together more, I think.
Amen to that. I couldn't have said it better myself. Oh, this has been so soul nourishing and so wonderful, Lucie. Thank you so much for being so giving of your time, your wisdom, your expertise. Before we wrap up today, if listeners could take one thing away from our conversation today, what would it be?
I think that what I value is you listening. That was another thing, actually, my mum said, apart from being kind and loving, is always listen to people. And I think that, yes, today, in a way, I've done more of the talking, but I really appreciate your listening and the listeners listening. And I'm starting a new YouTube channel and community soon called Soul Call Sanctuary, about honoring our soul call, honoring our soul calling, because it is so important that we do that we honor our soul calling. We get distracted with so many things, but actually, what is it, that thing that ignites us, that gives us that spark, and trying to tap into that.
What is your soul calling?
My soul calling is to uplift and inspire others through words and music, and it always has been.
Love it. And that information we can put in the show notes as well, so people can find this community. I think many listeners out there will want to know how to get involved. I know I will, for sure. You're also the host of the Singing Buddha podcast, Lucie. Do you want to share a little bit about this so listeners can find it?
Yeah, so it's just like nuggets of creative and spiritual wisdom, really. So people can find it on all the podcast platforms, and they can find it on my website, lucieburns.com.
Perfect. I'll be checking it out. So how can people best get in touch with you, Lucie? I have stagereadyartists.com, and I also have lucieburns.com. Is that all correct?
Yeah. Either of those, you can get in touch with me. Also, my music's on Spotify as Lazy Hammock, as Lazy Hammock, and all the other, Apple and all of them, and on TikTok. It's Lucie Burns Performer Coach, and on Instagram it's Lucie Burns Performance Coach, and Lucie is spelled with an IE, and YouTube Lucie Burns Performance Coach. But I'm quite new in kind of getting out there on social media, because I've been so busy for so many years doing the work that it's like suddenly now all the social media for everyone's blown up, and I'm like, oh, I've just been kind of doing the work. Right. So yeah, I'm now finally getting on the whole social media train, but that's where I am.
Girl, me too. The whole its own animal for sure. Well, thank you so much, Lucie. This has been wonderful. Thank you for joining me on Artistry with Heart and for sharing your wisdom with the world. It's been such a gift. And We hope that listeners out there will stay tuned for future episodes like this one. If you heard something that resonated with you or that you want more of, make sure to be in touch with Lucie. All of her contact information will be in the show notes. If you also want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Patreon. The link to this will be in the show notes as well. And here you can go deeper with the conversation I had with Lucie today and with your own personal artistry, which is why I hope you're here. And you'll even find some exclusive resources from stage-ready artists that Lucie has generously offered for subscribers to have access to. So definitely check that out. That's all for now. Until next time, be you and stay inspired. And now the full version of Flow.
Have you ever felt that you were feeling like the weight of the world was only yours to deal with? Feeling like there was no way out. All the pressures of life weighing down on top of you. I know it's dark where you are. I've been there, so take my hand, it's here for you.